Welcome to Welcome with Jesus Bible Study. We're going to be in the book of Psalms 138, verse 6. Though the Lord be high, yet hath he respect unto the lowly, but the proud he knoweth afar off. And I'm going to repeat that. Though the Lord be high, yet he hath respect unto the lowly, but the proud he knoweth afar off. One of the main things that cast the devil and the angels out is the pride and arrogance of thinking and boasting about themselves and believing and holding themselves in such high regards to think that they was better, not only than most people, but above all things and even above God. Over and over again, the scriptures tells us that we must remain humble. A lot of people believe in the scriptures that it says that wealthy people cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven because the love of money is sin, and that's not what it says. It is saying it is hard for somebody to have a lot of wealth to remain humble, because humble is the key. Remaining humble, staying humble is the key. And it is very hard because you get caught up in all that money, that you start loving money, and then you start doing things to gain more money. Being caught up in a whirlwind of lust of money. There's a lot of people that they don't realize that their pride and arrogance is keeping them from Christ. There's many Christians on here that boast and is proud of how many verses they have memorized. That's not Christian-like. That's pride and arrogance. You're not to boast about yourself. If you was to be boasted on, let somebody boast about you, but you should not be prideful. You should not be arrogant. The main reason why is that we do nothing of our own. That the only reason we have the ability to say and to do and to be anything is because God gave us the authority, the wisdom, the skills to do so. For we are nothing without God. We can be nothing without God, and we can do nothing without God. So the moment that we start being prideful and thinking, oh, look at me, I can do this, you're forgetting the one who gave you the ability to do so. You do nothing. God allows you to do things. You wasn't born with that special gift. God gave you that special ability to play football, basketball, to sing, or to play the drums or the guitar, or to paint, to draw, to drive really fast. You do none of these things by yourself. You didn't create yourself. You are not Professor X and the Powerpuff Girls that was throwing in all these ingredients and created the Powerpuff Girls. You do not create nothing. God does everything. He created everything. He gives all the ability to do this and to do that and not to do it. Nobody does it. So the moment you start being like, oh, and so we get caught up in these people who play sports and stuff. Oh, he's the GOAT. He's the GOAT. We know that is sinful. We know that is very sinful. And before every downfall was pride and arrogance. We see many of the greats throughout generations that was on top, number one, and doing this, and all of a sudden we don't know what happened to them. They fell and it was taken away from them. Why is that? Because they forgot. It wasn't them that got them there. It wasn't them that gave them the abilities. It was God. And so when you forget who is the creator and gave people these things, you'll be humbled real quick. It says also in the scriptures that those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves, God will exalt. that if you are welcomed into a house as a guest, that you should not take the seat in the highest, that you should sit in the lowest seat. And if it is found for you, it is better for them to come and say, hey, you come sit up here, than it is for them to dismiss you from the high seat and put you back to the low seat. Pride and arrogance cast out the devil and the fallen angels from the promised land, from heaven. Don't let your pride and arrogance keep you from entering the promised land. Stay humble. Know who gave you the ability. Know who gave you the wisdom. I once went to this church with a preacher. He would boast almost every couple of weeks about how many Bible verses he had memorized and how many times he quoted them during his preaching, that he even had some dude sitting there with the clicker and that would count, and at the end it was like, how many? He was like, oh, 200 and this, and he goes, I didn't even look, and he was very prideful about it, arrogant. Yeah, you may have quoted him, but you didn't understand what he was teaching, because when he was teaching some of those verses, I'm like, that's not what the Bible is saying. That is not what those scriptures are meaning. And so he was teaching a false doctrine. While he was being prideful about how many things he had memorized, he forgot the most important thing about these verses, what they actually meant. And that's exactly what the Pharisees was doing. They was pointing fingers and they was telling people, this is what the law says, and you're doing that wrong, and you can't be doing that. But they had no clue what the actual things that they was telling people meant. Because if they did, they would have known who Jesus was. And that's why Jesus called them vipers and hypocrites and blind, leading the blind over a cliff. So is those teachings. The false doctrine is leading people off the cliff and falling to the pit of hell because it's false doctrine. Be careful. Don't let your stubbornness, don't let your pride stand in the way of you knowing the truth. There's many people on here that's debating on these internet because they know one thing. Oh, I was taught this way. When I went to church growing up, this is what our pastor told us. You better be careful because what you was taught could have been wrong. So you're sitting there arguing with somebody who God revealed the truth to, somebody who understands, who has ears to hear and eyes to see, and God's wisdom to understand his knowledge. It's trying to tell you what God is teaching, what the word is actually saying. And many of you are arguing because out of your stubbornness, believe, because you're proud of, oh, I know, my pastor told me this, and this is how I was raised. God corrects those who love him. Maybe God is correcting you. But there's too many people who is too prideful, too stubborn, too arrogant to know and to hear and to accept the truth. That's why you got to be in this word for yourself. Don't accept what somebody taught you. Go read it for yourself. Get in communication with God for yourself so that he can reveal his wisdom to you. Don't take somebody else's word for it. Know it yourself so that you will not be deceived, so you will not be fooled, so you will not be falling off a cliff with a blind person leading you straight to hell.